welcome to the Skillfully podcast. And Skillfully offers world-class courses for high achievers. You'll find us at skillfully.co.za. And today we're with Fuaad Coovadia, who is a South African data scientist working on his doctorate at Oxford University's Said Business School. Fuaad has headed up data science and pathway intelligence for Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, which has a platform with over 4 million users. And he works regularly with local and international data science teams. We are delighted that he's offering his course, Power BI for Beginners, on Skillfully. Fuaad, great to speak to you.
It's great to speak to you too, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure. Now, Fuaad, you are excited, we know, about introducing people to Power BI. So let me ask you this to start. What does Power BI do and what makes it special?
Sure. I mean, you're right. I am excited about it. I discovered it a couple of years ago, and I discovered it as it's an interactive data visualization tool that is offered as part of the Microsoft suite of tools. And so what does that mean? It means that Power BI allows you to bring in data from different kinds of sources, be that spreadsheets, from Excel, CSVs, databases. It allows you to clean that data, model it, visualize it, poke around in it, and then publish it as interactive reports and dashboards. And so what makes it special then, I think, are two things. I think there's the first is the ability for it to produce interactive visualizations. And that's not just so you can, impress your colleagues with these shiny new graphs. I mean, the interactivity really benefits your analysis. The ability for you to play with a graph and see what happens when you change a filter and, look at a subset of the numbers you're looking at, or look at how it changes over time in an interactive way, that really gives you an understanding of what the data is saying. So for me, that really makes it stand out. And I think the second thing is probably the fact that it is a Microsoft product. So even though all of those things I mentioned, data importing and cleaning and transformation are all very distinct steps with complicated sub-steps, what makes Power BI easy to learn is the fact that it builds on Microsoft's existing product suite, specifically Excel. So for people out there who are familiar with Excel and familiar with spreadsheets, what makes Power BI special is that it's the next step. It takes the logic that you're familiar with, even the icons and the way Microsoft thinks about working with data, and just gives you that added, I don't know what it is, like an engine to take you to the next level.
Great. And it's interesting you mentioned Excel, because I imagine on some people's minds will be, look, I'm pretty comfortable with Excel. Is this just Excel repackaged, nothing more that special? And what I'm hearing you saying is, if you're comfortable with Excel, it will be a natural move to learn Power BI, but it will also be a move where you'll get something special and you'll get something extra. For example, in the interactivity of the displays.
I think that's exactly it.
Yeah. And so let's pursue our imaginary Excel person, or a person who has a job at a financial services firm, and a lot of it involves working with spreadsheets. So presumably a lot of people in your target market are in this area. Could you maybe mention some specific examples of how somebody like that could do their job better by using Power BI?
No, that's a great question, because you're right. That is exactly the kind of person who Power BI could be useful for, is people who are very happy with Excel, use it a lot, and are struggling to see what they could have above and beyond Excel. And one of my favorite things is seeing the glint in the eyes of someone who's loved Excel for a long time and then can see the value of Power BI. Nice. I think for me, there's the one example I could think about, if you were working in a financial services firm, for example, and you use spreadsheets often, is that you may get the same sort of spreadsheet sent to you by colleagues, or perhaps you pull it from a system on a timely basis. Maybe it's end of month or the end of the quarter, and you're getting a specific type of spreadsheet. And your workflow at that point in Excel might be to open it up, and to do a couple of changes to transform a column. The common Excel things that we have to do, replace commas with full stops or the other way around, and calculate some measures based on some of the columns, or replace some data points. Perhaps the way your system stores a value, you need to control and replace every instance of that value for your analysis to make sense. So these are common transformations that you might do every month or every end of quarter when you receive this spreadsheet. Now, what Power BI does really well is it records and stores transformations that you make on the data in a very legible way. So what that can be useful for is, if you've already done the transformations once, say you've done it in January, you've replaced all your commas, you've done whatever you needed to, you've calculated the end result that you want from that spreadsheet. When February comes along, you load that same data in, and it's got those stored steps, and you can make use of that as it is. And so not only is that time saving and perhaps for your own sanity a boost, but it also avoids errors in that manual process. And it also allows colleagues to trace what you've done. I mean, the big problem with Excel is that it's very difficult to see who has adjusted the numbers when. And it might be minor when it's just one or two people working on it. But when you're the size of an enterprise and you've got teams and you're trying to send this to colleagues who you don't communicate with frequently, you really want to understand how you went from the raw numbers down to what you're presenting as the end result. And I think that legibility and traceability of steps is really important.
Nice. So you can set out a set of transformations. It's legible to all. It's traceable by all in terms of auditing, in terms of saving you time for just this continual repetition. It sounds like a very valuable thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, maybe others aren't as excited about data transformation. So I'll also speak about the visualization aspect of it.
Yes.
For people in as you said, people who are working with spreadsheets, the output of your analysis might be a little graph that you make on Excel that you either present from Excel itself or you chuck into a PowerPoint and present that. And in my experience of doing that, an Excel user myself, is as soon as you present it to other people, their minds have a million other questions about, but what do those numbers look like for this subset of our business? Or what do those numbers look like for July, not August? And often what happens, the kind of process flow of that kind of interaction, is that you've presented a static image of what your data looks like. You get questions either about what does it look like in other situations or how can we trust it? And you have to go away from those meetings, perhaps make some changes, email it, or organize another meeting. Whereas with Power BI, and my experience of presenting directly from Power BI and presenting from a dashboard, is that someone can ask a question and say, okay, well, I'm not exactly sure if that makes sense. Can we double check what July looked like so we can triangulate our understanding? And that's like, well, that's one button to filter the graph in a different way to look at July's numbers instead of August. Or what happens when we look at this segment? And again, that's just a filter that can change the graph. So the ability for you to move from a monologue with your data to a dialogue, I think can be incredibly effective.
A dialogue with your data. That sounds completely enticing. And the beginner's course that you offer is compact and it's focused, right? It's these 2-3 hour sessions for a team at a firm, so people are working with their colleagues. When they're done with that compact focus course, what will they be able to do that they couldn't when they started?
I mean, the subtitle of the course is From Zero to Dashboard. And I think that gives you a good indication. It's, you're moving from perhaps not having opened the tool before, or perhaps you've opened it, but couldn't find your way around in a comprehensive way. Moving from that stage to being able to publish a dashboard. And publish in this sense means, you've got some visuals on a page or multiple pages, and you're publishing that to other colleagues in your organization who can interact with it, who can also benefit from the interactivity that we've been speaking about. So moving all the way from taking a data set, whether that's a CSV file that you work with or an Excel spreadsheet, and being able to work with that, transform it, create some visuals, and publish it. is what we're aiming for from these 2-3 hour sessions.
Yeah, so it's actually quite remarkable. In fact, it feels like people are getting some highlights of the different areas of great functionality of Power BI. You're not kind of leaving out something massive. Got these, transformation, data visualization, a dashboard. There's something of all of that. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's the, like, pedagogically, an introductory course, in my opinion, should, give you some idea of what the different domains are that you could, if you wanted to deep dive in the next course. So this should give you an overview of what are all the areas, or what's the full end-to-end process. And then you can go and explore that as you need.
Yes, and you mentioned the learning experience, and I want to talk about that. You're offering this course online. For some people, they know that's extremely convenient. Other people say, well, really what I'm looking for is to learn face to face. Now, I know there are occasionally face to face opportunities where you can physically be there, but standardly it will be online learning with a team from a company. Now, for those who do feel like the learning is worthwhile when it's done with the instructor in the room, what would you say?
Yeah, I had to think about this for a while, and I think I would ask those people, when was the last time they went to a theater performance rather than a movie? Or when was the last time they went to a live show rather than watch something on Netflix?
Right.
I think these are fundamentally different formats, and I think we've started in the design of the course thinking about what benefit you can get from the specific format. So I'm not thinking about the remote format as just a kind of reduced, smaller, constrained version of what we could do live. But in the same way as how one would think about a movie, there's all these other options for production value that you can do when you have the benefit of a single screen. So what do I mean by that? And Greg, you've attended one of the courses before, so you know this. There's production elements to the course that one can only pull off on a screen. Fast cuts between the segments, music that is consistent, video segments that might pop in at certain moments in time that give, a little bit of information that you need for the course that delivered live wouldn't have the same sort of style or vibe. So thinking about the course as almost a movie, or production value, we've got your attention. We might as well use it in an entertaining and productive way. Allows us to think about it differently than if we were in the room, which there's obviously a lot of value.
I love that response. So we shouldn't think about online delivery as it's like face to face, but sort of worse. Rather, it's a different kind of way to deliver a course. And if you grasp the opportunities, you'll get a wholly different experience in the same way that a movie is not like theater minus. It's just a different mode. I like that. And, I've had this Power BI seminar with you, and I must say I have never ever had such a good time with columns of data, and you really do embrace the opportunities of online learning. How do you keep people so engaged?
I think it comes from a bit of silliness in my background. I am a fundamentally silly person, I believe, at my core. And part of that comes from doing improv comedy. So I don't know if you've ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway?
I have.
Yes.
I have.
So these are classic improvisational shows. And so for people who are listening to this who haven't, improvised comedy is comedy made up on the spot using audience suggestions. So we may ask someone for, give us an object or a relationship between two people, and you create a scene given those things.
Yes.
And I think that kind of performance style makes you think about anything in the universe as an opportunity for having fun or creating something imaginative, and I think perhaps it's at the edge of one's imagination, but data and columns and Power BI, it's similar. It's like, what can we do with this that makes it fun is the starting question.
You've got all these objects and they're related in intriguing and somewhat mysterious ways, and you can have a great time with that.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yes.
how fundamentally weird is it that we're all sitting staring at these rows and columns of numbers? it can boggle the imagination how we've all decided to spend our time. So I think, one, understanding the funniness in that in of itself,
Yeah.
and two, trying to bring some joy and life into the fact that we're going to spend our time doing that, I think is a worthwhile pursuit.
Yeah, that's great. And I suppose, one thing that gives us a sense of significance as we stare at the spreadsheets is that they're not just digits. They are meaningful. They're meaningful to our organizations, to our careers. These figures mean something. And if you bring out the meaning, that can make it very compelling. Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. I think that's a really good way of capturing it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it makes me feel better about staring at spreadsheets for the amount of time I do. It feels very mysterious if they're just digits, but if I realize how important they are to me, I feel much better. And one of the things you do is you kind of weave in this murder mystery into your training, which is fascinating. I found it completely compelling. Can you don't don't give away the ending, don't but can you tell us what you're doing there? How does the murder mystery come into the training?
Yeah, sure. I think it's exactly like we were just saying. It's like, if the starting point is asking, how can we breathe life and breathe some fun into data and learning about Power BI, that's where this murder mystery concept comes from. And the idea is that um, everyone in the room who's going to be part of the training is trying to solve this mystery that's happened, this
Yes,
murder that's happened in a fictional universe.
yes,
Um, and as investigators, the way you can solve the murder is using data for
yes.
clues. The things that you analyze will give you a little bit of information. It will give you some new evidence, some new clues that will uncover the puzzle of what happened in the story. So we're using the narrative structure of a murder mystery and these threads of information that you need to pull on to give you a sense that it's interesting to solve the thing we're trying to solve in the tutorial.
What that allows you to do is use, important current techniques of learning, right? It's interactive learning. You're not just sitting and absorbing what the trainer has to say. It's peer learning. You're speaking to everybody who's learning together with you. Um, it's experiential learning. So I presume you're giving people some techniques and they immediately need to apply them to get the next clue. Yeah.
Exactly. You're giving people the ability to find the next clue. So there's hopefully that sense of excitement that, you're figuring it out.
I think such learning can be so powerful. If I think, for example, of my primary schooling, there's quite a lot of gray in my memory, but we did one project which was gamified. It was an advanced and unusual concept in those days in grade 6. And that shines out for me as one of the primary school experiences. In fact, the childhood experiences I've had. I think it lasted a term. And I remember very intensely working with my group, all the other groups, the room we were in, the game we were playing, and what we learned. Yeah.
Well, Greg, maybe we should do murder mysteries for little children then after
Murder
this.
mysteries for small kids, and we can get them into Power BI much quicker than we've even hoped skillfully.
That would be the dream.
You are now working, as I said, on your doctorate at the Said Business School. You finished a master's also at Oxford, in which you focused on advanced techniques in econometrics. Are you missing anything about South Africa?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I hope I'm not being observed by too many UK listeners to your podcast, but I miss the friendliness of strangers. I miss being able to walk down the street and someone immediately absorbs you into their world by telling you a little bit about their life. And obviously the nature. I love being able to go outside, which is less available here. I don't know if you can see I'm all wrapped up. We're in the midst of our cold winter. Yeah, so I miss those elements. And I miss Woolies, obviously.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned Woolies at the end, a little product plug. I mean, I think there is nature available. I remember when I lived in the UK, I would occasionally see nature, sometimes of very dramatic kinds. I remember
Yeah.
seeing my first crow and saying, "What on earth is that animal?" It looked like a very serious kind of creature to contend with.
Yeah, they're much bigger than you imagine, right?
They're shockingly large. I mean, if we could have a sort of pro Hardy-Dar showdown, I think
Oh
that would
yeah.
be tremendous.
Maybe I can bring one back when I come visit. Yeah.
Fuad, it was great to chat to you. Everybody who's listening, you really should check out Fuaad Coovadia's course on skillfully.coza. Power BI for beginners. Fuad knows so much about Power BI, and frequently it's the people who know a huge amount who can give the best beginners courses because they distill their knowledge and they give you a really kind of powerful, compact learning experience. So, Fuad, thanks so much, and everyone, take care.